All right, so I got was it Spooky Savings? What was it called? Some sort of thing from Parts Express. They do this a couple times a year, and I like to just find really good deals. One of the first deals that I found, just not sorting anything, was this three-way crossover for only $4. It's very simple crossovers, but it's at 1,000 hertz, which I think is a bit high for the mid. It's misplaced, but you know, again, that's for a mid, and it depends on what your mid is playing. Typically, I think crossover points should be right around 100, 120 hertz, and the next one up should be from that to the tweeter, which is anywhere from 2K up to 6K. So again, it just depends on what figures you're using. There was a guy, Ty, that was I was chatting with back and forth last night, and I found this for him. The only downside is that this is made for 4 ohm loads, and so if you use a 2 ohm load on it, it's not that it won't filter it anymore. It's that it'll change the crossover point usually about an octave. So a doubling or a halving of frequency. So make sure you use your charts and your there's a lot of online charts that you can use for calculating passive crossover points, and don't worry about the difference between Butterworth, Linkwitz-Riley, and then whatever the other one is. That's all dumb bullshit. It doesn't matter. I got on actually Parts Express to talk to him about. Let me see if it'll come up. No. So he was talking about his mid in his three-way setup. He has the Infinity. I don't know what it was. It was fancy looking, but he was saying that the mid range was a bit too annoying, a little too much output. And I said, well, what you really should do is use an L pad. And again, I learned this in the I learned this on a couple places, but I think they have reference to it in the loudspeaker cookbook on how to use an L pad temporarily to figure out the padding, the reduction in output that you want to either a mid or a tweeter. So, because typically the woofer doesn't get touched as far as level control, and you don't want to try to control it because it requires a really big inductor, really big parts, and it's really kind of unnecessary because typically the woofer is the least sensitive of the units, especially when you're doing a 2-way or a 3-way. And so I recommended let's see, stereo L pad. Let's see if it comes up. It was this one. Now, back in my day, in the 90s, this used to cost like $13, and now it's $40, which is a bit expensive. But I do recommend buying something like this or acquiring something like this. Now, if you can modify the smaller ones, which are usually about $10 each, to where they share the shaft. So they share the shaft so that they turn both at the same time. Now, what's great about this unit is that each one of these L pads is made for an 8 ohm load. And so what you can do is you can use just one, you hook up one. Now, typically these are in, out, and then common, which is ground or negative, depending on how you're phrasing it. So what you want to do is you can use this as an 8 ohm calculator level control. Like if your tweeter or your mid, whatever you're trying to control, is 8 ohm, and then also you can wire these in parallel to control a 4 ohm load, because now it's 2 8 ohm L pads in parallel. And so for a lot of car audio guys, this is a great way to do that. And this is if you really want to, again, it's more for education. I don't really recommend this for practical purposes. There are many other ways to control this or manage this in the lifestyle and the variety of products that are available today, rather than this. But I recommended this because he was using a whole bunch of resistors in series or even parallel. I don't know. It was just a big mess that was wrapped up in tape. And I was like, what you should do is, because what you do is basically you set the level. Once you have it hooked up correctly, you're doing your critical listening. You tone down whether it's the tweeter or the mid, either one. You don't want to do them at the same time. You want to do one at a time. In this case, it was the mid. So what you want to do is get the level down to what you like. And then what you want to do is go ahead and turn the system off. And then you want to measure. And there's going to be a resistor value that is series, and then another one that's in parallel. And that's what the LPAD does. It varies back and forth between those two values to number one, maintain the load over here, whether if it's just one of these, it's a 8 ohm load, and then if it's in parallel, it would be good for a 4 ohm load. But once you measure those values, then you can insert into the passive crossover what the values are for those resistance values. And then that's a permanent solution. I'll see if I can find something real quick. LPAD in schematic. See if there's any images. Yeah, so that's what it looks like. There we go. Okay, go away. There we go. See, that's what I was talking about. So there's one in series and then there's one in parallel. And what the LPAD is doing is giving and taking back and forth, and that will determine the output. Does that make sense? So what happens is you adjust the LPAD to the level that you like, and then you measure the terminals, and then that will give you the two values. And then what you do is you substitute those two values into the crossover network to then give that same, reproduce those same results. Does that make sense? So I'll probably have to do again, there are better ways to control your mid-range output than with an LPAD, and also with passive crossovers and resistors and stuff like that. But I just thought it would make a good video to kind of intrigue you guys to, again, I don't necessarily want to teach you everything on this channel. I just want to show you maybe the proper way to do it, and then you can research it more. So again, because you learn. One thing that I've noticed big time is that Facebook keeps feeding me in my feed these kind of, I don't want to say idiot questions, but just, really basic questions that aren't being answered on the forums. And so it's kind of baitish, because then what happens is I feel the need to answer the question, and then I answer the question, and then it goes, would you like to join this group? And I'm like, God damn it, I do not want to join Douche Flutes Anonymous or whatever group they want me to join. But I wish somebody was there giving me sensible, quality advice about performance, and not about brand, or about some of the, some people believe that CCA wire is inferior, and it's not. It's just only good for a certain ampacity, and that's true of whether you're using it for power wire or if you're using it for speaker wire. It's fine. I talked about somebody asked what's the best kind of speaker wire, and I said actually the most reasonable and affordable stuff is lamp cord that you get from Home Depot or on a spool, even if it's pretty old, even if it's 20-30 years old, because it's pure copper by law. Any kind of lamp cord, any kind of extension cord, those are copper by law. And that's just because they don't want anybody. It's not that aluminum is bad, it's just that aluminum sometimes has, people push it too hard. They ask too much of it, and they don't want a product out there that is misleading. So is there anything wrong with car audio aluminum wire, CCA? No. And CCA stands for copper clad aluminum. And what's funny is Wang Hai, I noticed him bragging on Facebook when somebody was asking this question about wire, and he even bragged that not only do they do a CCA coating on the aluminum, but then they also do a nickel tin on top of that, which helps with corrosion resistance and things like that, and that is true. So, but I just thought he jumped on there real quick. He's trolling Facebook, guys. So the CEO of Recoil International or Recoil China is trolling the Facebooks. So let's go back to this. I wanted to do this with you guys, which was the outlet center. And then now what I usually do is I don't go by most popular. I go by lowest to high. And then I go over here to view, and then I go try to view as many results as possible. Now, for a couple years back, the website would crash because it couldn't handle that. But this is what I want. So, and what this does is it gives you the cheapest deals up front first, and it also gives you the most results per page. So, and then what I do is, like, say you like this little simple speaker terminal, you just right click and then open in a new tab. So, because that way you don't have to reload this every time. Again, it depends on your browser and all that kind of stuff of whether or not how much information the browser is storing and how much RAM you have and things like that. But this is how I browse. And then this particular deal, and I've been doing this for years. Other things are these great little cheap speakers. Sometimes these are good for line arrays, and typically you want to buy them in cases of 100. That's where they give them a really good deal. And there's nothing wrong with these speakers either. They're just very limited on their bandwidth. So we'll take this 16 ohm speaker. If you, was it, let's see, 19 cents, 15 cents. So I like how big this one is because it's 5-inch. And typically you want to go, 5 inches is plenty. So typically you want to click, oh, I've fucked up my own rule. Damn it, I'm going to go back and do that again. There we go. Okay, so let's do right click, new tab, and then it opens up. I opened up some other stuff I wanted to show you guys. So this is a full range. This is typically used in a loudspeaker for like a television, like an old CRT. Notice it's shielded, so it doesn't affect the CRT. CRT stands for cathode ray tube, which is the old types that use a big glass tube instead of an LCD panel. So yeah, used for various Philips CRT televisions. And Philips could have also made just the speaker. It could have also made the TV, or even been an OEM for other brands that market stuff like that. Let's see. Key features, blah, blah, blah. Paper cone, voice coil with former and foam surround for minimal resonance. That doesn't mean anything. Shielded doesn't mean anything. Ideal for small line arrays, not for big line arrays. Now, what's interesting about a line array is that when you put speakers like this, like one after another up in a big line array, they typically, when they're lined up that way, they have a wide dispersion, which is what you're looking for. It's also great to just have a wall of sound hit you all at once, and especially if you're powering it off like a, 15 watts or something like that. It's interesting and it's curious and it's fun. But let's look at the specs on this. I always look for a low FS. Yeah, its RMS is only 10 watts, which is fine, especially if you have like 16 or 32 of these. Okay, the resonant frequency is 133. So the rule of thumb that they talk about in the loudspeaker cookbook is you want to be at least 1 octave above that. You can play down lower than that, but what you're going to do is run into distortion problems where it sounds muddy because the speaker is trying to produce frequencies that it's not really made to do. Like if you saw the Sundown ZV8 8-inch where it's like playing whatever it was, 18 hertz or something like that, you can do that. It just forces the shit out of it, and it doesn't do that naturally. And so again, always remember why you're seeing something to keep it in context. So the reason why Jacob and his crew of mischievous bastards are showing videos like that is to make you think that you can do this too, and at a price, whatever they're selling those for. Typically people, when they're selling stuff, they always have a vested interest in it because they benefit from the sale. And so you have to always look at that whenever a company, doesn't matter if it's JL Audio or if it's Rockford Fosgate, you have to look and decipher and determine whether or not that information is biased in a way. So like last week I talked about, in the live stream, I talked about the JL Audio Max system. So what would really be good is if there was somebody that was independent, or even a competitor can sometimes give a good review on a product like that. And that's one of the reasons why I gave a very brief dissection of what all the bullshit that they were talking about. Is it as fancy as it appears? No. But again, they want to justify the cost, which I think it was like $3,500 or $3,600. Back to this though. Frequency response, they say they recommend 150 hertz, which is again bad. You want to be about 1 octave above the resonant frequency, so it's 133, so you want to go up to 266. I would round up to either 300 or even 400 hertz. And so what that does is, let's look at the top end. Does it say? 13K. So most men can only hear up to 16K. So this might actually work okay, especially for like maybe, I wouldn't say an outdoor speaker because it's certainly not waterproof, but it might be good for like a back porch or something like that, where you want a wall of sound for really, really cheap. Again, the cost of acquisition when you're buying 100 pieces is only 15 cents, so you just move the decimal right. And so you get 100 of these drivers for $15. And I believe sometimes on these specials, they'll Parts Express will do free shipping with a coupon, or they'll give you 10% off. But typically, if I remember right, free shipping happens at $100, which is not that hard to do. But again, how big do you really want to get? And then also you might want to experiment small first, because if it sucks and you've put in 50 drivers per channel, on this massive turd, that's a lot of work to find out that it just sucks. So, but again, this was good enough for Philips to make thousands and thousands of these, millions of these for their little televisions. And 16 ohm doesn't matter as far as performance goes. That just means that there's more windings in the coil. It'll tend to be a little more sensitive. It'll tend to have a little more BL. And again, that's just because there's more L in the gap. And the B is the same, which is the magnetic flux. So typically these are designed again for a 16 ohm load. So that means they might have been used in parallel, like 4 in parallel, to get a 4 ohm load. It depends on what amplifier was integrated into the television. And then that can go back to whatever they used. Typically on the production TV, they were just using the chip amp, ST something or other. It's like this big, and it has all the fingers down there. I think I did a video on that on the Onkyo amplifier. Those kinds of chip amps were very, very popular in the 80s and 90s. Integrated amplifier. Chip. I think there was something else I wanted to do. You don't have to worry about the resistance or the millihenries. None of that stuff really matters. VAS you don't have to care about because it's not playing bass. You do want to isolate the front from the back, and you can experiment. Again, $15 for 100 of them. That's a pretty low threshold for fucking around with these. What you got to get good at is either getting a sheet of MDF, going to a sign shop and having them use the CNC to cut out all the holes on the MDF, and then just do one sheet of MDF for left channel, and then one sheet of MDF for the right channel, and then you wire them all in series parallel. And then you want to power them with like just a regular receiver, like 100 watts per channel is plenty, and then have fun with the results. So that's what I recommend for that, if you guys are interested in doing projects like that. These are really good too for bars. So was it last year? There was a guy that I met that he would make these outdoor porch wet bars, where you would find like a kitchen sink on OfferUp, or Facebook Marketplace, and then you would add a couple of bar amenities, and then you would create a front. And I showed him how he could build speakers into it, so that it's almost like a little DJ center and a little, place for people to get cold drinks or liquor or whatever on your back porch. It's just a fun little thing that you can make where it's kind of like a giant boom box. This would also be good for those. Of course, it's not that these are weatherproof, and you could spray them with a light coat of clear coat just to give them a little protection. Another good one was that I've never used it, but there's a waterproofing spray that's supposed to work really, really good. They call it nanotechnology or something like that. And it's better than the Scotch Guard. Scotch Guard would work as well. And just giving them a little coat so that they last a little longer. The other way is to just find another driver that you like better that's made out of poly. If you're using it for outdoor. So again, you always want to look at application when you're picking drivers. You also want to look at overall cost. And these are fun, good bullshit drivers just to have fun and experiment with. You may, even with a line array that you're getting from this one, was that back? Yeah. Even with a line array with this, it doesn't play up to 16K or 13K, which I think is actually plenty. But if you want to reinforce that area, you can actually let it roll off naturally and then cross up something right around 10K. Just a single tweeter that's probably up high for wide broadcast. Even those piezoelectric horns, they're like $1, $5, whatever they are. They're really cheap. Even just one of those. And again, you have to sit there and play with the resistance to it. You can use an L-pad or something, some sort of level control. Of course, the best is to buy amp, but so that way you can control the volume at the amplifier. But again, it just depends on your budget and what you're trying to do and messing around with that kind of stuff. So I wanted to show you that. And then these are kind of all dumb bullshit stuff. It depends on your application for these. These were made for telephones and small boom boxes, not really anything else. Nobody really uses this anymore, the airline stereo buds. Maybe like Southwest or Frontier or some sort of cheap brand. It's not even worth that. But for 30 cents, you can't really beat it. Especially when they charge you $5 to $10 on the flight. I usually like to keep a couple of these. These are nice. It's the old 3.5 to 5.5. This is for a floppy drive, and then this is a regular power connector. You just keep them in stock. But again, that's some of my hobbies that I do with computers and stuff like that. But so anyways, this is interesting. Remember, this is only 2.75 by 1.75, so I'm assuming that this part is 1.75 and then this part is 2.75. But open it up and look at it. It's from B52, and you can use multiples to get the bass output you want. Real quick, let me finish the thought. Back to this one. So now what you want to do is augment this with, on the subwoofer part, is probably have a separate subwoofer. And you could just do some cheap 15s, like 300 watt 15s. Again, it depends on what wattage you're running and how long you want to do it. If you only have 100 watts available and you're using passive crossovers, something that handles 300 watts is a 15, and then having just 2 of those or maybe even 4 of those if you want to go crazy, that's going to be great for your back porch. So a fun day in the back porch getting drunk with your children. Back to Aeroports, I wanted to give you notes that Recoil, I saw on the price list this week that Recoil has 3-inch and 4-inch Aeroports, and I'll do a quick video on those just to show them to you. I'm not sure they have them in stock. It says they have them in stock, but I have not put my hands on them, and I would love to review those. They seem to be pretty affordable. I think the retail price on them is only $14 each. But I haven't seen the market price on what they're going on. These are always good to have too when doing installs. These are great because they're the Crimp-on type, and they're great if you don't want to use an adapter. For 49 cents, you can just put that on the wire. You just cut it's usually a coaxial wire. So there's a braid around the center, the outside of the wire, the shield, and then there's usually a single piece of copper. And you put that up in that's the pin for the single piece of copper there, and then the shield gets crimped there, or it has some sort of way to secure it, and then presto, it works on the back of your radio or whatever radio you're using for aftermarket. Not really into Cat 6 anymore, RJ45 stuff, but these are always good to have. The couplers are really good, especially the back-to-back couplers and extender. Those are always good to keep in stock. 4-pin mini for S-Video, not really as popular, but I think this is the same connector for a computer mouse, also used on, I think, Sony something controllers. A 3-volt non-flashing LED. These are great, 25 cents. I used to buy the blinker ones that had the resistor already built in from Micro for about $1 each. So try to look for that. And then these are really great. I call it the least expensive alarm, which is basically where when the car is running or the key is turned forward into the accessory mode, the latch on a relay keeps off, and then I wired it so that when you turn the key off, it turns on the LED, and it turns off the fans that it was using to couple with on the relay. So I have that old thing. I'll post it on the post. Again, a lot of this stuff is just so that you guys can have this information. It doesn't really have to do anything with what I do anymore, but I think a lot of you guys might find this valuable. 16 volts at 680 microfarads, good for power supplies. If you want to build your own power supplies, I'd rather see bigger, like use the big 1 farad or even a 5 farad. We have 5 farad caps going with a digital top and distribution block built in for $100 shipped. Right now, I got a bunch of those used, 3 of them. It's cheaper to do it that way. I don't know if I wanted to go through all these. Where are we at on time? Damn, we're already at 27 minutes. Sometimes they have closeouts on like this. This is the Alphasonic wire at 79 cents for 1 foot. That's kind of expensive. Not really good. I like this one because it has the chassis mount. It's an RCA through. And what's great about this is sometimes you see them with the solder side, and this is even better because then it just uses a regular RCA on the inside of the chassis, and then there's one for interface to the outside of the chassis. So, and these are the yellow inserts. You can get them with different colors. You can get these in gold, and then the inserts can, red, white, yellow, green, blue, depending on what your signal is going. That's actually a good deal on those, 79 cents. The price on everything has gone up, especially if you can get Little Fuse as a brand. I lost all my stuff. Bigger port tubes again, and I love these kinds of accessories. These are great for when you want to build your own DJ speakers. These are really good for that. I don't know where you'd use a male-to-male except for a PC connection. Balun transformer. These are great for other uses than just using an antenna to cable, which is what it was designed for. Switches, momentary switches, again, all kinds of useful things. There's a bigger arrow port, looks like 3-inch by 5-inch, and then what you can do is extend the back part. What I prefer is when they have a flange with screws in it, but you got to be careful putting in the screws. Make sure you use a flat head instead of a pan head instead of a flat head. A flat head is flat on top, but it's like at an angle, and that angle spreads and breaks the plastic. Now a pan head is flat underneath, and that's what you want to just sit on top of that. So that's another reason why I use pan heads when attaching speakers. Sometimes people attach them hard and it busts the aluminum hole or bends the steel on the speaker frame. So I was watching Bobby Gately, very reluctantly, doing a demo video where it almost seemed like it was his wife or whoever was like, "Come on, Bobby, everybody loves you. Get on camera." And he did not want to be on camera, but he was showing the what screws he uses for his woofer setups. These are a great deal. I got a whole bunch of these, but again, they're all gone, where they came with a bunch of components on the backside that were already soldered, simple capacitors, some resistors, and I think some inductors. I think they're all out of those, but they were the same price, which is $1 each. And this is, especially if you buy 50 or more. Again, this is kind of oversized, 4.5, and the terminals aren't very high power, but a lot of times these are great to have as replacements, or if somebody fucked up the side of the box where they drilled the hole too big, and then you can kind of round it out to put this in there to give it a better look. So I would always keep all sizes. Again, this is when I was doing, they're good for resale too, because you can resell them for anywhere from $5 to $6 retail. Just go to a shop and ask what they charge. If they're a dick shop, then they'll charge you like $15-20. If it's a nice shop, they'll usually just give them to you. It depends on how many you want though. But again, it's always better to be empowered, and this is a good item to add on your list if you haven't made $100 on to get the free shipping. And if you're not ordering, if you're paying for shipping, don't be a dummy. Just pay the $100. That way, at least you get something for your money. These are a waste. The equipment that you're working with is never that sensitive. You don't need to use that. That's a grounding strap for when you're supposed to be working on like a circuit board or stuff like that. You should always short out. If you're working on like an amplifier board, you should always short the positive and negative, so that way there's no charge in the caps. So you don't really need to use that static thing. But some people insist on it, and sometimes they do that at your job or whatever, if that's your job. Again, a lot of the stuff, this cheapy, these are really useful, actually. This is a female DC jack, so these are great to install on a dash or as a pigtail on something that you want to add an accessory to, and at right around $1. I would always buy 10 or more, and they're just good to have on hand to interface with all kinds of things, or even just to make a little extension cord for a power supply, something like that. Resistors, again, I usually buy the minimum, which is 10. You cannot use a potentiometer. You can, but I don't recommend it. I recommend the big L-pad. The L-pad, the difference between a potentiometer, and an L-pad is that an L-pad is made for like speaker level, and that one that I showed you earlier is made for 100 watts. Not that you should run 100 watts through it, but it's made for higher voltages. Like these are only good for, let's look at it. Open a new tab. Usually tells you. And it doesn't matter what, again, this is really convenient that they've changed this. 1/4 watt. So now if you're just doing level measurements, that might work. But again, you don't want to use critical listening. You're going to listen to at least about 15 watts. And so you'll burn this up if you try to use that. Does that make sense? So you want to use like an L-pad. And like I said, I usually just buy that one, and you keep it in your kit of goodies, and then have a bunch of resistors. And again, that's only if you're working on that kind of problem and you think that kind of solution is the right one, using passive components rather than biamping or triamping or whatever you're doing. Close that. But this is a stereo version of that same thing. It's a 50K pot. You can also wire it in parallel if you want a 250K pot. As far as pots go, again, that's what for the input on an amplifier, typically the standard is right around 10K or even 20K, sometimes 25K, sometimes 50K. But again, that's your input impedance that you can use as a gain. These are kind of in between. 1/4 watt is kind of large for signal, so it's kind of an in-between. But again, a lot of these depends on what you're using them for. Again, application based. And all it is a coil. It's actually not even a coil of wire. The L-pad is a coil of wire, but these usually use a graphite deposit on a little disc to do resistance. And then also there are a couple of different kinds. There's logarithmic, and then there's also linear. And all that is the shape of how it responds when you turn it. So some of them are linear, and then some of them are logarithmic, where it's like got a curve to it, or a Q, as you would call it. These I found interesting. So what would be great is if you had a little room underneath here so that you could then use it to bolt to something, like the top of a capacitor, or use it as a grounding block. But otherwise, it's a very affordable just distribution block. And I assume it's made out of aluminum or zinc, which zinc is very affordable. Aluminum is also very affordable. There's the other one. This one's $4. I was looking at. Doesn't say what the material is, but yeah, that's just the warranty, meaning it's got a taillight warranty on all these parts, which is as soon as you buy it, it's yours. Again, I usually use this closeout stuff to find all kinds of stuff, and then you just keep it in stock, keep it in inventory for later projects. It's best if you can apply those quickly, otherwise you end up with a warehouse full of stuff like I did, and then not enough time to do any of the projects. Extension cord, 50 foot, a little long, but very valuable. It's especially good for as a replacement for those bass knobs that use this type of bass controller, which is just a headphone jack. And usually it's input, output, like tip ring, input, output, and then common. Is that right? Yeah. So send, receive, and then common. But again, this is good for an extension. The best ones are and Recoil has those as well. I think they have up to 30 foot cables that are good as replacements. Rockford used them on their Prime series. Lightning Audio, I think, used a little bit of them because that was Rockford. And they're just great as replacements for bass remotes. Single pole, single throw, rotary switch. These are fantastic. I love these for all kinds of cool projects where you want to turn something on and you only need a 3 amp. You can actually use this to trigger a relay so that you can control larger current stuff. You can also get this to control like a big solenoid, a big relay, 500 amp, whatever. Cooling fans are always awesome. These are always going to be smaller than you think they are. That's why they're 97 cents. I used to buy trays and trays of them. They're just good to have. And I've talked to you guys about that too, about if you can, what you want to do is, this is a 12 volt. What you want to do is find 24 volts, and then you run them at 12 volts, and then they run quieter and less stressed, so they last longer. So, but typically, like here in Arizona, it's super dusty, so they crust out just from the the elements. Orion XPR Pro wire. It'd be funny to have that HCCA wire, like what's the difference? But I'm sure the HCCA or NT wire, intense, would be like a nickel tinned kind of wire. But I think that's all I wanted to cover with you guys. We're already at 38 minutes. Oh, the other one was a little power supply that I saw. It was like a little 2 amp power supply. A lot of you guys don't have access to Goodwills like I do, where they sell like a, here's the ones I was telling you about. So, different colors. It's called a wall wart, which is like, it's a little square power supply that just plugs straight into the wall. And then those are great for running all kinds of crossovers or small electronics that are 12 volt powered. Again, it has to be 12 volt or even up to 15 volts. Power supply, it only needs to be like 1 amp, 2 amps, and it's plenty for whatever you're going to run. I'm actually going to use one for the equalizer preamp that I'm running on the computer setup when I get the computer set up. And this is it. This is the wall wart. And typically what these do is under no load, they actually run higher in voltage. So when you measure them, always try to put a load on them. Even if it's a 12 volt fan, you can run it at 9 volts. But what that does is it puts the power supply under a load, and then you'll get to measure its constant output of what the voltage is actually going to be. So this is a 9 volt, 300 milliamp power supply. So it'll probably run at around 12 or even 13 volts without a load on it. and then you put the load on it, and then you get to see where the voltage sits. And then what I do is use a silver Sharpie to then mark the back. And so that way, when I need a power supply real quick, I go into one of those boxes, pull it out, and it's good to go. I know what I need. Watch batteries, always great. I think that's good. Usually these have about... Oh, I wanted to cover the GRS replacement, which was this tweeter. Great tweeter. It just loses on its tail end, or the high end. I think it only goes up to 16K, which again is great for most people. And these were the 2-inch tweeter for Dynaco. It's at 6 ohm. These are great for all kinds of applications. So you can see it just uses a little ferrite magnet in the back. What it appears to be ferrite. It could be neo, but it looks like ferrite. Again, especially at that price, which is only $20. The really great thing about this tweeter, though, is having a low FS. I think it's like 750 hertz. Where did I see it? Oh, I think I had to open up the specs. FS is 730. So again, you want to go at least 1 octave up. And so that would be at what, 1460? So 1500 hertz. That's very low. So this would be a really great tweeter for doing MTM setups. Doppolito, which is where you have a mid, a tweeter, and then a mid. So this would be great for that. But again, you want that to be as small as possible, and you want the drivers to be grouped together as close as possible. So again, it depends on, but as far as for affordability, and I love a lot of the GRS products, especially for rebadging. So that's an easy decal to remove, and then presto, it's your special low FS tweeter. That's shallow mount, whatever you want to market it as. And there's all kinds of products that you can do that with. That's how JL got their start. That's how a lot of people get their start. Here's a 12 volt, 300 amp, but at $3, that's a little high for me. Usually I don't pay any more than $1.50 for the ones at Goodwill, and I just buy them whenever that color sticker is half price. Here's a proximity motion sensor that you can integrate into something that's interesting. It's anywhere from 6 to 24 volts, so basically 12 volts with 5 amp. And so you run it series to something else, and then it'll trigger it. And sometimes you can just use a proximity motion sensor for to trigger a light, not necessarily an alarm or something like that. Good deals on fans. Always keep spare fans, especially for CPU. Swivel casters. This is a really great price on swivel casters. It's a 3-inch, so be aware. These are always great to just add to a table. I can't tell you how many hacks that I saw in prison where they would just do something like that. Because again, a lot of the budget is really controlled, and you got to just make do with what you got. Zero gauge. I would check to make sure this is... That's actually a good price, $3 a foot. It's probably CCA. I don't see what it's made of. See, because it says crafted from top quality materials. So when they say something like that, that means they're hiding something. And then... yeah, at $3 a foot, that's actually a good, that's pretty good market price for CCA. That's definitely not going to be copper at that price. Copper, even the copper that I can get you is right around $7 to $8 a foot wholesale. Always check Amazon for deals, and the tariffs are really fucking that up right now, because I think it's like a 50% tariff on copper, if I remember right. I'm trying to make this video to distract you guys from all the bullshit that's going on right now in the world with all the misinformation and all that other stuff. I don't really want to talk about it. I like this. This is a good flange. I love this tweeter that's associated with it. Let's see if it shows a link to it. I wanted to use this truncated face with the truncated frames from the Empire, MPYRE, which is a version of the Adair Extremis. It's a carbon fiber version of the Dire Extremis. Let's close that tab. Done with that tab. There it is. So I think these are aluminum or steel. Does it say? What this is good for, though, is if you already bought the tweeter that has the full face and then you wanted to change it to the truncated one. The fabric dome truncated is the one that I buy, which is this one. It is 4 ohm, but after you put some passive components in series with it, it ends up settling around 6 to 8 ohms with the resistance. This is insane, $54. They used to sell the one that I like for $28. And it was the 28 millimeter, which is 1 1/8 silk dome. Yeah, the price went up on those. The one I like is, there it is, this one. Yeah, that's the one I like. And then you can buy it truncated. Boom, that's the one. So the FS is really good on it. The price is good on it. Of course, buy 4 or more. And then look for the deals of 10% off. Again, as good or better. It's also great that they sell replacement diaphragms. If you're planning on doing production, you want to buy a few of these. And you can make some really good home speakers that are as good or better than anything that's super exotic. Oh, real quick, I was able to find 5 or 6 audiophile magazines, and so I'll be doing the story time with those with you guys. It's not that those products are attainable, because they're super expensive, and anybody watching my videos cannot afford them, which is fine. But what they're really great for is for inspiration for you to be able to build and replicate something like that, because anything that they can build, you can build. Understand that, and it doesn't matter what it is. And if they say, oh, this is tooled or this is tooled, there's always another way around it, and China has already figured out a way around it. So what's great is that Parts Express, through their Dayton brand, has figured out this is basically a ScanSpeak tweeter. That's what this is. You go with a little bit larger than 1 inch, and it drops the FS just enough to be really low so that you can use it in an MTM setup, because the Doppelito, which is the MTM array, you want to have a crossover point of right around 1 to 1.5K. And that's another thing that helps with what's called lobing, which is the dispersion, a very wide dispersion, almost 180 degrees. And so that gets really interesting on doing something that you're making for home and sounds really good. Power handling is a lot at 50 watts RMS. It's 8 ohm. Frequency response is 1300 to... See, now here's where they follow the rules. So resonant frequency is 834. So a doubling would be about 1678? Or no, 1668. And so, but they're running it a little bit low, but you don't want to do that. You actually want to run it at... you can... When you run it lower than the doubling of the frequency of the FS, you run into sometimes power handling issues. Because when a driver is playing a low frequency that it's not really made for, it causes excessive excursion. And again, excessive excursion leads to that coil being out of the gap. And if the coil gets out of the gap, it gets hot. If it gets hot, it melts down and burns up. So if you are going to run this at 1300 or even 1500, make sure that you are aware that the power handling will be affected a little bit. Now, in this case, it's 50 watts. So it'll be probably lowered to about 40 watts, but most people don't listen to any more than 15 to 30 watts anyway. So this is still a really good tweeter for that. Actually, when we picked out the Gonzo tweeters, that's what we picked it for. The FS on those, I think, was 950. And so we wanted to cross them down at originally we bought them as replacements for the ADS tweeter. And a lot of those we got that couple pallets of the ADS crossovers, and those were all set to 2.6 kilohertz, 2600 hertz, and so you needed a tweeter that can play down to 1000 hertz to fit that, to work with that crossover in a good way, and we did lots and lots of those. So I think that was it. You guys can cruise and look at this. This is a great way to, You can jack off to this stuff if you want to. I don't really recommend this. Even though last night I was taking care of business and I searched, what is it? I always search it just because I'm curious because the results come back different every time. It was that Family Guy episode where he says search, what is it? It's lactating, pregnant lactating Latinas. And if you search that, it comes up with a whole bunch of results in images and videos. But if you add the word teen to it, and we're talking about 18, 19, if you add the word teen to it, they go, no results. There's no results in this category. It's like, the results are being very censored. So again, this is all part of the, my feed for TikTok is showing that the world is ending and that it's just running into havoc, and that's not true. But it's very difficult to get away from that. And I hope that you guys use this as a way to stay calm, to learn how to make money at home so that you can be with your families. This is really affordable. This is awesome. A 12-volt powered soldering iron. That's really good for only $3.50. And that's all you really need. You just got to take care of the tip. And it's not even worth changing out the tip. And just buy extras, buy 10 of these. So let's see if they give you a price break at 10. Nope. And even the MSRP says it's $9. But this is the old deal, one of the old deals that you used to get from Harbor Freight, where they give it to you for free or something like that. They had the 110 volt, but this is fine. So this will do most soldering jobs, especially in the car. Which I never liked running that big old extension cord and then my fucking solder station into the car, but I did it. So, but anyways, yeah, another deal here. Sometimes these are good for parts. Sometimes these are good for replacements, just to have on you. Again, all kinds of great little deals that they have. This is a really good deal on casters. $3 for a set of 4. Go and compare the price on Amazon. A little project box. This is expensive for a project box, but this is the old LaPi little Class T amplifier that they sell. Used to sell for $20. Now they sell for like $30, $40. Because all of a sudden some influencers, like with his fucking handlebar mustache, he's like, I found this to be a very good value. And all of a sudden it just blows up because everybody else is a douche flute, hipster, kid in his 20s, no responsibilities. Good Lord. You like how I'm bad mouthing you guys? Sounded really old. These are good. These are the Panasonic replacements for Bose. These are interesting. It's good to have a couple of these in stock, especially if you're flipping Bose speakers, which I got some this week from Goodwill that I'm going to flip. I think I ended up paying like $40 for the pair, and I'll probably sell them for at least $100, $150 for the pair. These are good to have. This is expensive though, $4.90 for a little connector like that. A lot of times you can just get a cord that has some sort of adapter and then just cut the cable off, and then you have the 2 wires, and then you can use it for whatever you want for some sort of testing. A lot of times I would keep something like that on, and then I put alligator clips on the pigtail so that you could run signal into like a piece of PA equipment in and out of an amplifier or a speaker, depending on what it is. These are also good for, again, don't pay this price because that's expensive. In PA, they often use this as a speaker connector, not just an amplifier connector. And then here's the female. That's actually a good price for the female, but for the male, you can buy cables for nothing, and you just use them from there. There you go. 12-volt LED lamp for Marantz. What color is it? Is it just clear? Again, these are good for all kinds of things. And they're using these words as keywords to get hits. What color is it? I think they're just clear. And they're showing that they run cooler than incandescents, which is true. And remember that this is a diode, so you can run AC into it and it rectifies. Don't run them too hard. Don't turn up the voltage real high. Sometimes they'll have a built-in resistor into them because most LEDs are only like 3 volts. think it's enough. What is this? A Bluetooth app controlled low voltage lighting? Oh, that gets into weird shit I'm not into. Sorry. You like that antenna on there? Can you see that? It's for long reach. That's expensive for a project box. That's expensive. See, and then now we're getting up into the, what, $4 and $5 range. And that's when I start really losing interest. Yeah. Sometimes I still like to make myself go through the whole list to see if there's any good deals that you can get. But typically it starts to get more and more expensive. And what happens is the value evaporates. So the cheaper they are, the more they have. And then, like I said, on that first one with the speaker, you can buy 100 of them for $15. That's crazy. So, is that right? Yep. Two decimal places. Yep. Anyways, this is about an hour. I'm going to go ahead and upload this as a preview. I hope to see you guys all on the live stream at 6 p.m. Arizona time / Yukon time. And I hope you had fun cruising the internet for good deals. That's too much, but it is 110 volt. So again, do price comparison. Sometimes you can buy stuff for resale too. It's a great way, like especially if it's a name brand and people just don't know Parts Express. It's a good way to resell. Here's the one I was looking at. It's $5 for a 2 amp 12 volt power supply. So, and I like that it's not corded, but again, I only paid no more than $1.50 for these in Goodwill, and they already have wires on them, so which is convenient. And then you start getting into the drivers, round drivers. One more, and then we'll go, because you guys can do this at home while you're drinking and listening to the radio or listening to the stereo. Not a big fan of these exciters, but I would love to try them on a couple big panels of, like, you want to use something that's really reflective and has a little bit of a bounce, like a big window. Those would be good on, especially if you put multiples, like in a little small package in the center of the window, so that you get maximum flex, because that's what's happening, is you're actually turning the whole window into a speaker. That's like a tiny bass shaker, but it's higher frequency. So the frequency response is not going to be great, but again, if you can get them cheap enough, they're kind of fun to play with. And sometimes they're a good solution for putting audio in a place that normally wouldn't have audio. The other downside, though, is that you got to wire them. And so typically if you wire them, you got to drill a hole in the whatever it is. Some people use these in drywall, which is not great. You have to think about the harder the surface, the better the response. So a very damping type of material like drywall is not going to be great. Even a piece of like MDF, because of all the fibers, it quickly kills a lot of the signal transference to the outer parts of the material. So you want it to be like, and even plastic has really good damping characteristics. So you want to use something crispy like a window, like glass. Mini dildo. I don't know. I'm getting tired. I gotta go eat. My blood sugar is dropping. But that's it. I wanted to share some of that stuff with you guys, and basically how I would do this ritual when I was searching for stuff. I'm not really searching for stuff like that anymore. But again, it's interesting to see what is available. Here's a programmable DC to DC, which is a buck boost converter. You can convert 5 volts to 30 volts, and it does about 4 amps of current. These are really great for, like, if you get those chip amplifiers, and they do best. They'll do 12 volts, but if you can get up to 40 volts or 30 volts, this is good to have as an example until you can get a power supply. So another hack is that last night at the Goodwill, I found some 40 volt battery chargers for cobalt lithium tools. And so you can often use those as just a regular power supply for some of these chip amps that like to have 36 to 40 volts. So, or again, I only paid like $5-6 for them, and they retail for 45. So you can sell them in between. You can sell them like 25 shipped is a good deal that somebody will jump on. And so you can flip your, let's say $7 with tax into $25. And then the profits from that pay for your other exploits and deals that you found. This is insane. 25 feet for $17. That's too much. Again, shop around for that. But it is 25 feet, which is interesting. It's better just, I like the shorty ones, the like 6 to 12 inches. And then you can use a regular extension cord from there. Again, use the candy cane and the green extension cords after Walmart closes out. They give them away for like $2-3. They're fucking great. Anyways, I'll see you tonight on the live, 6 p.m. Thanks for tuning in and trolling the Parts Express website. Thanks for Parts Express for offering great deals like this. Now, remember that this is not the only place to find these items. So always check around, always do some Googling. And sometimes Google shopping is helpful. Sometimes it is not, because Google can be bought, meaning that they shift the results and censor the results, as I was telling you about the pregnant lactating Latina versus pregnant lactating Latina teen. So that they're fucking with your search. So I'm going to start exploring a different browser because I think they're doing some censorship through the browser. And then also doing other search engines that don't fuck with that. And it's really sad if you have to actually go to the dark web in order to just search for, young, fertile 18-year-old girls that wear glasses and have big areolas. It's like, that's not illegal. Quit judging me. So, this is the roller tool. Dynamat roller trailer. So this is expensive. Let me show you real quick. I found the other day at the Goodwill. I thought this would be a funny joke to show that it's you just want to look at the tool and the performance. You don't necessarily want to look at the brand. So these are casters for underneath on a bed, and I got it half price. So I paid about $1.50. And these you can just put a handle on if you want, or just use them bare. But they're great for ironing out Dynamat. So, yeah, the young kids got pissed off when I told them that, there's no difference between different brands of Dynamat. And this little young guy was like, no, we used a microphone and we measured. I'm like, you know how many variables you have to control in order to get a fair measurement on which Dynamat is better? And then I said, also, were you controlling mass to mass? Right? Because really all you're doing is adding mass. And so you want to find the one that has the heaviest, most dense material. And that will control the vibration the best. Because again, all you're doing is adding mass. And he's like, no. And I'm like, yeah. Post your video up, fuckface. Show me your science. Otherwise, fuck you. But they, kids don't respond. You got to turn the hose on and get the sand out of their fucking vaginas. Let's see. Desoldering. It's kind of expensive for a desoldering tool. There were some kits that I got, a desoldering station, a rework station for like $50. Be on the lookout for that shit. Again, that's if you want to get into that stuff. But I'll see you tonight. I love you guys. Talk to you later. Bye.